Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Crashy, and today I want to walk through a hypothetical set of patch notes that I have written down for essentially some of the changes that I would like to see. Now, I don't want to do like a wish list per se, because I do want to kind of read through this like this is a set of patch notes, and I'm sure that I'm going to miss some things, but I feel like I wrote out quite a bit of things, and I kind of want to just talk about what I would like to see changed, and then I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. So that said, let's go on ahead and kind of jump into it. If I do decide to pop up any of the text on screen, trust me, I'm not trying to type it out right. So if you see any typos or anything, just bear with me. So let's go on ahead and jump into my patch notes. So we have general changes, and nothing is in great order, but I just wrote it out because this is what I'm thinking. So Unite moves cannot be canceled, but only interrupted down to 95%. So currently in the game, there's definitely an issue where if you get interrupted, you get knocked up, any form of CC while you're using your Unite move, it essentially gets completely taken away from you. I think that this is actually a pretty game-breaking issue. In a 10-minute game where you only really get like 2 to 3 ults on most characters, I don't think that having your Unite move completely canceled is fair. So I would love to see that any interrupted Unite moves would just be automatically set down to 95%. So it's like a small punishment for, the timing that happened, but not a massive punishment for essentially something that happens randomly. Alright, next line is respawn timers change to scale per in-game level. The way that the in-game respawn timers works, I honestly don't even know how they work. I mean, it's based on like how many kills you have, or if you haven't died in a while, or it's all these weird factors, and the simple reality is that you could just standardize the respawn timers based on level, and that would be much more digestible, much easier to understand, and would probably have a better result in-game. Alright, ranked matchmaking change to accommodate +1 or -1 in-game rank. So this essentially means we're going to tighten the matchmaking. If you're veteran, you can play with +1 rank or -1 rank, and vice versa. If you're masters, you can play with ultra or masters, or they might even just make masters only a rank. But essentially, yeah, we need to be tightening in the matchmaking a little bit. Alright, next general change is performance point gain reduced by 80%. And this is just a random percentage, but essentially my goal here is to drastically reduce how many performance points you're getting, and essentially that will reduce the effect of performance points on the ranking system as a whole. I like the idea of performance points, but it needs to be much less effective in my opinion, because we're getting losses sponged and we're getting like free wins, and it's just kind of weird. Performance points is a weird system to begin with, but if you want to have it because I genuinely see what they're going for with this, that's great. Let's just reduce that effect, maybe 50%, whatever the case may be. Let's just have performance points be kind of like on the side and in the background, and not something that is having like a really strong effect in my opinion. Alright, next one is bot matches have been removed from ranked matchmaking. As you can kind of see, these last 3 points, I'm really just trying to improve the matchmaking and the ranking system here, just going for removing some of the nonsense that I've talked about in the past. So, alright, your favorite selected Pokemon will now be featured as your first pick option in character select. I think this makes a lot of sense. It's really annoying to have to like scroll and try to get your favorite pick. If you already know you have a favorite pick, then selecting someone as your favorite would be a nice way to have them first on the list. MVP system reworked to reward MVP to the player who has been voted the most good jobs. The current MVP system is really random and pretty pointless, and it doesn't really do anything, and a lot of the time MVP goes to the person that just like scored and AFK'd the game the most, so it really makes no sense. I think that if someone's going to get MVP, it should be a team vote for who deserved MVP. Now, correlated to that, the MVP player receives a 1.5 times multiplier to their performance points. So this would give people a reason to vote for things. This would give people, a way to kind of improve that performance points and have that performance point gain be a little bit more increased, even though we're reducing it down by like 50 to 80%. But, it would give something, right? If you're MVP, your team feels like you played well, then cool, you get a nice little boost. Fix an interaction with in-game shields plus score shield held item. I don't know if this is a bug currently. I don't know if this is intended, but either way, having normal shield stack with score shield is incredibly oppressive. So, Yeah, let's just pretend like that's not a thing and we'll get that removed. Now, this is going to be a hot topic and I would love to hear some opinions on this in the comment section, but normalized all Pokemon evolutions and ability unlocks to levels 5, 7, and 9. Now, in my opinion, I really hate that some Pokemon evolve at 10. I hate that some Pokemon, or even just get their ultimates at 10, others get them at 8, some get them at 9. It's really, really weird. It's just weird. It changes the balance of the game so much, like the perception of what characters are strong because they get their ultimates early for the first Dreadnought fight or shortly thereafter, and I really, really don't like it. As a MOBA player, there's very few instances that I can think of where not having like standardized power spikes is like okay, maybe in like in one character kit here and there, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of having a large variety of Pokemon that just completely have different power spikes. It's really, really weird to me. I don't like it, and I think that it hurts the viability of certain Pokemon. All right, let's move on from general changes, and we're going to be jumping into changes to the center position. This is a simple read, and you'll definitely know what I'm going for here. It says, during the first 3 minutes of battle, Pokemon from the attacker battle type will deal 80% reduced damage to Lillipup, Ludicolo, and Bouffalant. So the goal here is simple. I want to get attackers out of jungle. I don't want them to be jungle or rolls, but I also understand that they need to be able to farm jungle. They need to be able to kill their lane minions as well. So I wanted to add an 80% reduced damage debuff to attackers for the first 3 minutes on Ludicolo, Lillipup, and Bouffalant. This will stop attackers from starting in the jungle because, quite simply, it won't be viable time-wise. This will stop attackers from stealing buffs in the early game from junglers. This will essentially stop attackers from being able to jungle. And then after the first Dreadnought spawns, then the jungle kind of opens up as a farming area for them. But I didn't want to reduce their ability to farm Corphish, Audinos, Apoms, anything like that, because those are all classified as wild Pokemon, so I made it very specific. In my opinion, and we've talked about this quite a bit on this channel, I think that the current attacker jungle meta is just really, really unhealthy for the game. There's really no benefit that it brings to the game other than just being able to jungle those characters safely, which is mostly just a benefit to the attackers and to the attacker players and not really the rest of the roster or to anyone else that would essentially want to be in jungle that's not an attacker. So I think that this is going to be a really, really important change, or at least some kind of change. I don't really care what it is as long as it achieves the goal of getting attackers out of the jungle. All right, let's get into Pokemon buffs. So on my list, I just have Pikachu and Absol. I really don't know what these characters need. I think for Absol just needs more defense and health, maybe. Like a way to stay alive, get that kind of Wigglytuff treatment where they're just not so glass cannon. In the end game, Absol just struggles so incredibly hard to fight at all. I mean, when you dive in, it doesn't even, there's just like no way to fight with this character. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. Maybe you could, just increase flat stats like HP, shielding, or not shielding, but defenses, SP defenses, or maybe you could add like shielding and some kind of healing or unstoppable immune effects during abilities. So like when you dash in, you get a shield or something like that on Night Pursuit or Night Slash in Pursuit, maybe something like that. Or if you land 2 abilities, you get a shield, something to give this character the ability to fight. As for Pikachu, I feel like Pikachu just needs better scaling, like either a little bit more damage in the end game or more auto attack damage, so you can kind of play Pikachu like a hybrid where you're doing abilities and you're hitting your opponents. Either way, Pikachu just feels really, really bad. All right, other buffs on the list are going to be for all-rounders: Charizard, Machamp, Garchomp, and these are the early game buffs that I wanted to see hit the game. So I've talked about this in the past where I think that they are really, really good characters, but we need their curve to getting stronger in terms of defense and health to be a little bit like ramped up. So I think in the early game, if we could give Charizard, Machamp, and Garchomp like much, much more defense, SP defense, and health, then we could escalate their like power curve into a normal like power curve for their scaling by just making them much, much more tanky in a sense in the early game, probably like on par with most tanks. I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, but like if they essentially had like similar health to like Snorlax or another defender in the early game, they would be able to stand there and kind of do more damage in the lane. So this would help them in lane quite a bit, and this like increased scaling would probably only even go up to like level 5 or 6, and then we would hit like the normal curve that the game has set out now. And this is really just to kind of improve the efficacy of all-rounders in lane. All right, let's move into nerfs. So I put Wigglytuff Sing. I think either the cooldown needs to go up by like 2 to 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, or the speed needs to come down when Wigglytuff turns on Sing. Currently, she's kind of crazy. You just turn on Sing and you just run in towards your enemies. I like how she's being used, but I'm not a fan of how effective it is. It's really, really crazy. Next on the list, I have Snorlax Block. I hate this ability with a passion. It's probably my least favorite ability in the game. I think this one's actually simple. I think that you make the first hit on any player that knockback stun, and then everything else, like after that first hit, there's no more knockback stun. It just pushes you and you can move out of it, or maybe you just can't walk through it. Whatever the case may be, it needs to be way less effective than what it is now. It is super infuriating. And then for Lucario nerfs, I put passive / damage. I'm not exactly sure what the best thing to do with Lucario is, but Lucario feels like he can just get away with way too much, and I think that's because he's incredibly tanky because of his passive, and he's incredibly bursty even when you're not using any damage items at all. So I think that maybe his passive could come back down a little bit. Like I'm gonna spitball numbers here. Let's say his passive comes down by like, I don't know, 15%, and let's say maybe some of his damage comes down by like 10%, 15%. So let's pull him down just a little bit. You know, we don't want to kill him, but we want to pull him down just a little bit. All right, for Zeraora, I think that Zeraora's discharge needs a tiny nerf, a really tiny nerf, maybe 5 to 10%. It feels like it's just overperforming just a little bit, but he's the only speedster that's viable right now, so I do want to see him kind of stay there, so I want it to be a very tiny nerf. And yeah, for the other speedsters, I didn't put them on the buff list because I'm not exactly sure what to do with them. They may actually be good, just assuming that the attackers wouldn't be in jungle, so maybe we would have to like look and see, or maybe they could just do some generalized buffs for them. But moving towards attackers, Greninja surf damage decreased. I think the same thing, maybe like a 10% nerf here, just so he's not like fully sniping everything with his surf and getting that reset. I think that Greninja's damage is just a little too high, and maybe even just his auto attack damage. But I think in general, Greninja and Cinderace, even if they were in lane, they scale so incredibly that, you know, their early to mid game wouldn't be nearly as strong if they were in lane than now when they're in jungle, but I do think that they're a little bit too strong. So maybe nerf Greninja's surf damage, and then Cinderace maybe a little less attack range or a little less damage. It feels like the characters are just overperforming a little bit. Alright, so for battle items, I don't really know. I don't really have a great idea here, but I definitely want to see some increased efficacy of the non-meta battle items. So basically, Potion, not really Goal Getter. I think Goal Getter's fine, it's just really niche. But like the Smoke Screen one, like basically all other battle items that aren't, I'm looking them up right now, like X Speed, X Attack, Slow Smoke, Potion, like all of those are just like not really good at all. So maybe if they could see some kind of buffs, that could be nice. I'm not really sure what it needs to be. Maybe those could just be like super low cooldown. Which would maybe be kind of crazy, but could be really, really interesting. It'd be like having like another ability almost. And for held items, this one I think is a pretty simple section. I want to nerf Buddy Barrier to be an ally shield only. I think that this would be a very good like nerf for the item. If Buddy Barrier is an ally shield only, a lot of characters would stop taking it, which I think is perfect. I think that would really, really balance the item. It would be good for like tanks, it would be good for supports. But you probably wouldn't use it on like attackers and speedsters. Maybe some all-rounders would use it, maybe, but even then probably not. So that'd be a really, really good nerf to Buddy Barrier. As for Focus Band, I think that the heal on it is just really, really high, so maybe we could nerf that down to like 10% from what I think it's 14% currently. And then all of the out of combat items, I think they need to have their timing reduced from 8 seconds down to 3 seconds. This is a very fast-paced game, a very, very fast-paced game. Having an 8-second out of combat timer is kind of wild. I also think that out of combat should be considered against wild Pokemon. Like it should be out of combat to players only, is what I mean to say. I don't know if I said that right, but that would be much, much better in my opinion. And then stat line percentage scaling for non-item effect scaling items. So that sounds really confusing, but Floatstone, the item effect of like say Floatstone and Shell Bell, they don't really scale. I mean, Shell Bell kind of does, but not really. So you could do an item stat line scaling. So what I mean by that is like Floatstone is like, I think it's like 24 damage at level 30. Well, you could do 24 damage plus 1% damage per level. So that way it actually scales the item and it would make the item that has a weaker effect than some of the other items still a little bit better because it would actually be scaling. So that would be really good for buffing some of those items that just kind of fall flat a little bit. And then for score stacking items, I think that the max scoring should be at 4 down from 6, and that means that you would just get more. Like, I want the value to be exactly the same, but you would get more from those dunks, meaning you don't have to score as much, meaning those items would be much more viable, and they would actually be really good items. And then there are some other niche items like Rocky Helm and what's the other one? Assault Vest. Maybe those percentage scalings could just be increased a little bit. I didn't really have a specific idea there. But yeah, buff up those items just a tiny bit to make them a little bit better and kind of like in line with like Focus Band or, other defensive items that, maybe they wouldn't even need buffs if these other ones are getting nerfed like I'm proposing. So those are my patch notes. That actually took me a long time to get through them, not gonna lie. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I would love to hear your ideas or your thoughts about them. I know that this is all very subjective, so be kind to me. Treat me well, but I definitely do appreciate you spending your time with me here on the channel. As always, friends, be sure to be kind to one another, tell someone that you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.